Welcome to the Combative Nerds Podcast. Join us while we break balls and try to outwit each other at every turn while debating all things nerdom and trying to make sense of this world. Look, I'm not gonna lie, this is a Herculean task and I'm not sure we have enough brain power to do so. At the very least, we can laugh and offend each other through the process. Thanks for sharing your day with us. Now on to our show. Hey guys, thank you for joining us for the B-side. This time we are going to talk about She-Hulk Attorney at Law, episodes 1 through 3. I just finished watching them, and I'm going to give you general commentary, probably a little bit of the lawyer perspective, and then IEG is going to share with us all the Marvel intricacies that I had no idea about, because I didn't read the comics. I just looked at the covers, because she was pretty. All right, brother, in general, thumbs up, thumbs down for the show.
Oh, thumbs up by far.
How? Why?
It's so they're trying to pull a lot more into this than I thought they were going to, because over the last year and a half, 2 years, all the shows and the movies and that kind of stuff that Marvel has come out with have been singular stories, not really connecting with anything else or not really tying into whatever else. You know, you talk about Black Widow and Shang-Chi and these sorts of films.
What about Loki?
And then you got WandaVision is that way. However, it kind of set the stage for the expansion of the multiverse, right? So
Sure.
they touch base on it in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. You got a sense of it. There's some videos where people have tied in WandaVision to Loki, right? Certain
Sure.
scenes where they kind of time perfectly with one another. I think that Loki was a really, really good show, and it set the backdrop for a lot of things. That's gonna tie in more to like Quantumania.
What's that?
Quantumania is the new Ant-Man and Wasp.
Oh, okay. No
movie
idea.
that's coming out.
Okay. Thank you.
So they're going to go into the quantum realm, and that'll be, I think that's next year. So that'll kind of bring in like Kang the Conqueror,
Sure.
who we saw a little bit of in Loki.
Sure.
It'll set the stage for Loki season 2 and, you know, the future of the MCU, because we're balls deep in the multiverse now.
Is that MCU 1.5 or 2? Like which phase? Is there even a 1.5? I know there's 1 and 2.
Yeah, no. So we're past like 1 and 2.
Oh,
We're
okay.
technically in phase 4 now.
Oh, crap.
So phase 4 ends with Wakanda Forever, which is coming later this year in just a couple of months.
Okay.
And then we'll go into phase 5. And then at this last conference they did, they talked about phases 5 and 6, and they kind of laid out like where it's going. So they gave the timeline for where this is going over the next 4 years, and the number of films and TV shows that are coming out in between that. So I'm really excited, because you're gonna get Marcel Ali as Blade. And,
excuse me?
I probably butchered
back
his name.
The fuck up here. Or did you just say that they're coming out with a new Blade?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They announced him like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
I don't keep up with this.
He was actually in, I don't know if you watched Luke Cage, but he was actually not Blade, but that actor played a character in Luke Cage.
Nice.
So that actor they've chosen to play Blade in Earth 616.
Who have they decided is going to direct this Blade movie? Because I love the originals.
I don't know. But Wesley Snipes has come out before and said that he was interested in making an appearance, but he'd love to see the new Blade do his thing, right? Like he made some kind of comment or post on Twitter or social media and basically said that he's not going to be super involved in it, but he'd love to like make an appearance and kind of pass the torch on. So
good for him, man.
I enjoyed the first ones.
I loved them. I even liked 3, even though most people didn't. I really liked it. I thought Ryan Reynolds made the movie.
Yeah. Hannibal was a great character in the comics, and like he was awesome as Hannibal in Blade Trinity. But that movie and that trilogy single-handedly saved the Marvel Universe from bankruptcy, because they were about to sell off every character they had just to stay afloat.
Please explain this to me. I know none of this.
So over the years, and when you go back to like Marvel and DC, right? So
Okay.
they've done crossovers. There were a lot of crossovers in the comics in the early 90s and that kind of stuff. They had several different appearances, but DC has been fairly popular, and they've had, the Batman, the 1960s TV show with Adam West and Burt Ward. They had the super popular comic book series, like Batman was a huge hit, since the 1950s. And then you've had, the Tim Burton Batman movies, and then the atrocities that were Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Yep.
But then you had, Christian Bale come in and knock it out of the park with the Dark Knight trilogy.
Right.
Recently, you've had like what I think was a good movie with poor actor choice of the new Batman film with Robert Pattinson. I think he was awesome as Batman, but just terrible as Bruce Wayne.
Okay. I haven't seen it, but I could. I without even watching it, I think I could already agree with you.
But then you go back through Marvel's history, right? And like what movies and TV shows can you think of that are Marvel related?
That's a really good
go
point.
back as far. So the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, was an incredibly popular TV show, which is why She-Hulk was made in the first place.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Dolph Lundgren was the original Punisher.
Yes. They had those Channel 5 midday Spider-Man movies. I don't know if you're probably too young. They had those. They weren't even movies launched into the cinema. They were daytime movies. And they had Spider-Man.
There were soap operas of Spider-Man.
Basically.
Yeah. And they were based off of the Japanese versions of that. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, the Japanese had like a whole TV show that was similar to Power Rangers, where Spider-Man had like a mech suit and like just ridiculous technology, right? So, which is kind of funny when you watch some of the newer Spider-Man films, where Tony Stark's giving him this new technology and that kind of stuff, and what makes more sense and seems more feasible in that universe setting is kind of paying homage in a way to some of those ridiculous Japanese TV shows where he was in like a Zord suit. You know what I mean? Like he was like 700 feet tall in this mech suit fighting villains and whatever. Like Spider-Man versus Godzilla or something. It was ridiculous.
Was that Marvel license, or was that just a knockoff of the time?
I don't know if it was officially recognized, but I think so, because Marvel was a bit of a whore back then. They were like selling their rights to characters left and right just to get a buck.
It makes you wonder if Stan Lee was, a low-key Hugh Hefner, where he was throwing all these parties and burning away the company money. Yeah, I'm wondering.
He was a pimp.
I wonder if he was like like the Playboy owner, just very low key and just pissed away all the company assets for whores, which I respect, but I understand. But still, you ruined the franchise, sir. Get your priorities straight.
He like saved the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel as an entity before he passed away. Rest in peace, Stan Lee. But
how did he save him?
Yeah, very much before that, he introduced some characters that gained traction years later. And so some of the stories and stuff that he helped create, because obviously Stan Lee is not an artist. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but like some people would like go to cons and be like, hey, can you draw Spider-Man? It's like, yeah, Stan Lee did not draw. He's like not an artist at all.
Got it.
He can barely draw a stick figure, but some of his stories and some of his catchphrases and that kind of stuff, Spider-Man is his success story. Spider-Man was Amazing Fantasy number 15. It was basically like, hey, this is the last run of this series, and Stan Lee came forward and he was like, hey, I want to introduce this new character that I came up with, Spider-Man. And the editor was like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
Oh my God.
But then and so it was like the last issue, and so his editor didn't generate any content for it, and they weren't really caring about it. They were going to move on to something else, and they were like, all right, do whatever. And so Amazing Fantasy 15 came out, Spider-Man became a huge hit, and it blew up. And so then they did a singular series, but it was an accident. I mean, it was like
Wow.
This is a retarded idea. Like, we want nothing to do with this. It's not going to happen. And it's like, screw it. Give it a shot. And it worked. So through that, they created a number of different characters. She-Hulk, the main purpose we're here was an accident by design. And it was played off of the fact that the Incredible Hulk TV series had done so well. You know, Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk had gained so much notoriety and attention that CBS, I believe, don't quote me, but CBS, I believe, had been in talks about creating a female version of that to kind of play off the Bionic Woman TV series.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so before that happened, Marvel was like, oh, screw that. We're going to create like a She-Hulk. And so they just printed a comic, because you can print a comic way faster than you can like make an entire TV series.
Yep.
So they printed a comic, that way they could own the copyrights to it. And it blew up. And that's why this entire show is happening. But yeah, so just to play back into the history, Marvel's not been successful. Now they are. Sure. But like, generally speaking, DC has made tons of money, hand over fist, cinematically and on TV shows.
Even though Marvel was more popular than DC from comic sales, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But you're just in the sheer viewing and movie aspects, Marvel just that portion of the company sucked.
Yeah, so storytelling was DC's fine art. DC had been in the game for a long time, and they published great stories. It wasn't about like who had the coolest superpowers. It was about like, what's the best story? You know, Batman traditionally, especially the earlier comics, he was a detective who wore a cape. He looked absolutely ridiculous, but he was a detective at heart. So, and it was Detective Comics, you know, DC was Detective Comics. And so it was great storylines, and it was kind of the 15-minute radio spot episodes and that kind of stuff turned into comic book form. That's what you got with DC. You know, you got a lot of the kind of like Green Hornet type style things. And so Marvel was traditionally like flashy. It was the Vegas of comics.
Just anything to get eyes.
Yeah. It was successful because it was cool and it was new and whatever. And now the tables have turned, you know. DC still has a superb animation studio, but their cinematic universe is lacking severely.
You know, to make a snide comment, I when you said the animation department of DC, I was like, oh, you talking about all the CGI in their movies?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Because their movies to me is their animation department.
Superman mustache. Yeah. Oh, man.
All right. Well,
it's a tragedy.
You know, I didn't care to watch them that much, so I think I watched half of it and I checked out. And it wasn't the updated, was it the Nolan whatever cut?
The Snyder cut for Justice League.
Yeah, I didn't. It was the crappier version, so I'm sure that new cut that they did would be probably better, probably makes sense. I hate when editors butcher a storyline just to fit the movie into a. So, yeah. But
yeah, that was a sad scenario.
I don't know enough about it.
So Snyder, his daughter, Zack Snyder, he had to step down from doing the movie because his daughter committed suicide.
Oh my God! Thanks for derailing the podcast. Yeah.
Sorry, no,
but how do I come up with a shitty comment after that one?
But
I'm going to stand down from that one.
Yeah, but he came back and basically
my condolences.
The audience like pleaded and begged for his version of the film because they thought it was going to be much better than the shit we got. It was absolute crap. So they came out with his version. They allowed him to reshoot some scenes. They gave him a substantial budget to redo the film. Not as much as he wanted, but redo portions of the film. They were able to reshoot some things, take some things out, add some story in, and it was much better. It was much longer, and there was some very unnecessary scenes in it, but
probably just trying to get their money worth out of it.
Yeah, it was far superior. I mean, there were definitely some scenes that could have just been left out, and it would have been fine. But
do you think they made their money back on it, or was?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I was about to say, man, that's a pretty ballsy risk for the company to, on a revision, give a brand new budget. That I'm glad they made their money back.
Oh, they would have lost half their fan base. You know what I mean? Batman and Superman are their bread and butter. So
Okay, I see what you're saying.
yeah, they were doing it to appease the fans who were pretty much done with DC and Warner Brothers and everybody there at Warner Media was like, we got to do something. So
Oh, that's a smart business move then. Okay. All right. Well, let's move to She-Hulk. So, do you want to get into it, or you want me to raise the major critique that I've heard about it before?
Oh, go for it. I want to hear it.
Okay, so I was listening to Tim Pool from Timcast. He's a great media guy, but he runs his own YouTube shows, and I watch him quite a bit. And he was discussing She-Hulk, and I've heard it on a couple other places, YouTubers, influencers. And the critique is that the She-Hulk show pushes the woke agenda. Feminism, putting men down, politically correct. And what is your take on it? I'm sorry. Let me add some more details. That's the general statement. They specifically addressed it in episode 1, where Bruce is trying to talk to Jennifer, correct?
Right.
Where Bruce is talking to Jennifer and stating, you're going to try to control your anger. It can lash out. And she went on a little bit of a speech where she said, I'm a female and I get catcalled and I get, my work explained to me by men, and I'm always angry and an infinite amount more angry than you are, or I've had to control my anger an infinite amount more than you. And so Tim Pool and his guests, loosely, they weren't being horrible about it, but was saying that this is a woke agenda, that it shows that she actually hulked out and got angry at that moment, and that they were drawing that comparison against men and women. Let me just give you my opinion real briefly so you know where I'm coming at. I think that commentary, although is valid, smells of a non-married person's commentary. What I would say is when I hear a woman rant like that, which they're always going to do, they're always going to tell you you're not doing stuff around the house as well, or that you don't listen as good, or that their life is so much harder. That's what us married men call nagging. And you just need to fucking get over it, because it's going to happen. They're going to break your balls and they're going to shit test you. You married a woman. If you wanted to be happy, be gay. It's inherent in the word gay. Happiness. Okay? But we're talking about men and women interaction, not wokeness, just nuttiness. Not wokeness, just nagging. So that's where I'm coming at it. There are some points there, but I see this as the general battle of the sexes, and something that if you can't take that on the chin, man, you ain't getting married. Sorry. All right. You.
Yeah. So I'll agree to some of those points. Generally for me,
not the ones that'll get you in trouble with your wife.
No, absolutely not. But I'm not saying this because I think, like my wife's obviously going to listen to this or whatever, but I'm not just saying this, but like my relationship with my wife is much different, and it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different relationship and they have different, norms and that kind of stuff or whatever. But I have a pretty solid communication foundation with my wife, and I do things around the house consistently. I know we had talked earlier about like some of the projects and stuff my wife wants done, and
right.
The extent of my home improvement skills and that kind of stuff is awesome. So it helps certainly, but like I've never been lazy. So it's like, yeah, I may work 10 or 12 hours a day or whatever, and then I'll come home and then I'll wash the dishes and I'll cook dinner and I'll, do laundry and that kind of stuff or whatever, and I'll do that more, especially when my wife's had a bad day. But so I don't experience that as much as some people,
but she still nags after all of that. Let's be honest here.
She doesn't
don't
have
answer.
to.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
She doesn't have to
answer. Blame me. All right, for the record, for everybody listening, his wife is a sweetheart, according to everything she's allowed him to tell me about her. So,
yeah, she wrote the script. I'm just following it. I'm like Joe Biden up here, just reading everything. No, I'm
like, hold up a sign in Discord if you're. if you're being held
Blink
hostage.
twice if I need help.
No, but she's an absolute sweetheart from all of my experience. So, okay. So we, is it safe to say we both take the position that sure, there might be elements of what you could call wokeness, but I think those same elements could be attributed to just the battle between men and women. That's what makes us great, that we're different and that we get to laugh at these differences.
Yeah. And I think there are greater examples of like sexism against men in other Marvel films and in other Marvel shows and that kind of stuff or whatever, you know what I mean? Where they're trying to like empower women to a level that's just not to say that like women shouldn't be empowered. What I'm saying is they're like trying to like over promote certain things, right? Like overshadow a story by trying to promote like wokeness, right? That happens. It happens all the time. And it's kind of like an overcompensation type thing. But as far as like She-Hulk is concerned, I've not noticed anything overtly sexist against men or anything like that. You know, a lot of the things that they say can't really be argued with. I mean, like, how many times have you gone to a gas station getting catcalled? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, to me, there is all men do this, most men do this, men do this, and some men do this. You know, the first two, okay, you know, the other two, then yeah, okay, now you're pushing the envelope and you're not being reasonable. Everything I see in this show is within the realm of reasonable because they poke fun at women back from a male perspective. Let me give you an example. In She-Hulk, when the influencer bad superhero breaks into the courtroom at the end of episode 1. By the way, spoiler alert, screw you if you haven't watched the show yet.
It's Titania. You're welcome.
Excuse me. Oh, thank you. What happened? Oh, the paralegal was asking her, hey, you need to turn into She-Hulk. And Jennifer goes, but I like this suit. And then they're like, well, you got to do it anyways. And then she's going to run out and become She-Hulk. And the paralegal goes, no, the shoes. Oh, thank God. I really like those shoes. Thank you. Like, that's a dig on women too, right? That they're, you know, materialistic and they're more worried about being cute than people dying. Like, you could infer negative portrayal to women, but no, it's pretty accurate. If my wife was She-Hulk, which sometimes she does act like her, and I wonder why. It's not because I've said anything, right? But
yeah, never. No,
of course not. But you know, she's still going to care about her shoes and her outfit, losing her favorite outfit. So I think it's like that banter back and forth, that exchange of shit talking with each other. That if you like each other, you should be able to do.
Yeah. I think that there is like a little bit of back and forth, and I think that without that room to play, right, it does become one-sided. You know what I mean? Like if you can't talk shit a little bit about one another, you know what I mean? Like our relationship as friends and that kind of stuff, like you'll give me shit, I'll give you shit. And then, you know, we continue on about our day, you know, but if it ever becomes one-sided, that's when there's a problem. So I like the fact that they kind of, no pun intended here, they kind of go both ways in this show. And and
I've liked it.
Opens up the conversation.
With that being said, I do have an issue, and I haven't read She-Hulk, but I've seen She-Hulk. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to forgive the producers and the writers. They clearly need to, you know, show more cleavage and hike up her skirt, because that's every picture I've ever seen of She-Hulk. And they're not staying. I'm just being a purist. I want them to stay close to the source material. And I don't see an issue. I don't see that as being misogynistic. I see it as being a purist. What's your take?
That's very noble of you.
Yeah, thank you. I tried.
Yeah, so
all right,
just to put it into perspective, like when you're talking about She-Hulk in the comics years ago, and I'm not being misogynistic here, I'm talking about like statistically based, the vast majority of the readers of comics 10, 15, 20 years ago were going to be teenage men or you know, young adults that were reading these comic books. So sex sells, you know what I mean? You're far more likely to buy something that is sexually appealing, regardless of whether you're male or female. You know what I mean? Like opening night for Magic Mike was as successful as it was for a reason.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And yes, I've heard that counterpoint about Shrek being far more successful. But what I'm saying is, like, sex does sell. it wasn't like large groups of men or, whatever going to Magic Mike opening. It definitely wasn't a youth group. But, there was a target audience there, and it met its target. And so that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to target She-Hulk to their audience, and they were successful. But times have changed, and you don't necessarily need sex as much nowadays because like it's overly stimulated. Everybody's broken into that market.
I disagree on the point that I was of that age and never really grew up because I'm stunted emotionally. So I didn't grow past that part. I'm still that consumer. they still need to lose a little bit of clothing. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my God. Well, you got a little taste of that in episode 3. But.
Well, we'll get to that. That's where I might forgive them. So, all right, no, let's get into it because I'm going to forget this. So,
okay.
She-Hulk twerking to me equals my willingness to forgive them as my willingness to forgive Lucas and the Star Wars industry for movies 7, 8, and 9 after they launched The Mandalorian. So like, in a weird way, She-Hulk's twerk is the equivalent of The Mandalorian in my heart. Does that make sense?
I mean, I understand.
That's why we're friends.
But I mean, I can't completely disagree, right? Because I understand there's some merit there.
Because she had a fat ass. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Debatable on whether or not Megan Thee Stallion had a fatter ass or not, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was hilarious. My wife and I were watching it together, and we both just started laughing. We thought it was hysterical, and it was great. It was like one of the highlights of the entire season thus far. And so I mean, like, sex does sell to an extent, and like that was Marvel's way. You can notice if you go back and watch the episode, they like severely edited that song, by the way. But
yeah,
they included it.
I noticed at least, episode 1, episode 3, they have one thing about sex. I can't recall anything from episode 2. But in episode 1, the drunk crying scene where she was bummed that Captain America was a virgin. Like, it's funny, but I'm like, that was unnecessary. And then the twerking scene.
Well, Emil Blonsky in episode 2 talks about his 8 soulmates, right? Or whatever,
Yeah.
So he talks about being pen pals with these women he met online, and you know what I mean? Like inferences.
Yeah.
But
I think we're gonna get like one occurrence per episode, and we're talking about it, right? So it worked.
Yeah, I mean the show has been successful, probably so far more successful than any of the other Marvel shows to date. Even WandaVision, which my wife's gonna slap me for saying that, but WandaVision was a great show. It just took 3 or 4 episodes before you really got into it. You know what I mean? It was one of those slow build-ups, whatever. That's fine. That's
that I have to disagree with you, and our friendship might not be able to get past that wedge.
Oh, no.
But let's not ruin it for this episode. We can argue about how horrible that show was and how drunk you were when you watched it, which is the reason why you probably thought it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that later. Sure.
Okay.
Let's talk about that later. Right. What I want to ask you is source material. The way She-Hulk became She-Hulk in the show, was it the same way in the comic?
No, absolutely not. So Marvel takes liberties with like all of their shows. So just to kind of preface this, like, I don't know verbatim every action. I'm a nerd, and I have read a lot of the comics and that kind of stuff, and I have read a lot of the origin stories, and I do kind of know some of the backstory. So if I get some of these like small details wrong, like, forgive me. I've got like thousands of comics, and I've read a crap ton of them. So originally in the original She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters is Bruce Banner's cousin. They are kind of hanging out together, but she's on the kind of on the run. She's prosecuting a client, and there's people out to get her, right? So she's with Bruce. She gets shot by these like hitmen or henchmen or something like that. And Bruce just kind of forgets for a second that he's the Hulk. And he realizes that he shares the same blood type as her. He needs to give her a transfusion. They don't have enough time to make it to a hospital. They break into a home or the home of a doctor or something like that. And like he transfers some of his blood over to her, and then she becomes a She-Hulk. Like that's how it happens in the comics. And like some of the details may be a little skewed, but that's generally how it happens.
Okay. So there was a mixing of a blood,
differs,
at least.
Yeah. It differs drastically from the way that Marvel's doing it. But I think, and this kind of jumps a little bit ahead, I think the way that Marvel's doing it is going to, because here's how I see and I'm going to take a short kind of exit
detour
off of, Marvel is getting away from the original Avengers that we know and love, right? Obviously, they've killed off a couple of the original Avengers from the original Avengers movie, and they're going to kill off a few more over the next few films, as we've seen in some of their casting and that kind of stuff. So, we'll see like we saw the last bit of Tony Stark as Iron Man, which I think may not be his last appearance, but we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
So in episode 2 of She-Hulk, they go a little bit further into it. But in episode 1, you see the car derail off the side of the road because there's a courier ship from Sakaar, which is obviously from Thor Ragnarok, the Grand Master's planet where the Hulk had been for a couple of years before Thor and Loki show up. You see that courier ship fly in, and they reference it a couple of times in that episode, and then they reference it more at the end of episode 2. This ship from Sakaar flies in to deliver a message to the Hulk. So I kind of think they're going towards like World War Hulk, which is going to be awesome if they do that. And that's a great way to end the Hulk in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think that's kind of where they're going. They're going to take Mark Ruffalo out of the MCU, and that would be the way to do it, because every true Marvel fan wants to see World War Hulk.
World War Hulk. Is that the one with the I don't know which one that is. I keep on thinking of the arena and the combat one. Is that the one with the Hulk with the sword and he's like Conan the Barbarian Hulk?
Yeah, so you got a glimpse of it in Thor Ragnarok, right? So he was forced to be a gladiator. In Thor Ragnarok, they changed the storyline slightly, so there was no major king that was over him making him do this or whatever. So in the original World War Hulk storyline, like he landed on this planet, he was forced to participate in these gladiatorial combative challenges and that sort of thing. And then he fell in love with I think it was like the king's lieutenant or something like that. I don't know. It's been a minute since I've read it, but he fell in love, and then they ended up having like 2 children. And so that's kind of where the storyline differed in Thor Ragnarok. They don't discuss any of that. And I don't know if they're going to go into that. Like maybe the courier ship told him, like, hey, you got 2 kids back on this planet or whatever, back on Sakaar. And, at this point in the TV show, it's been like 7 or 8 years since the events of Age of Ultron, where he landed on Sakaar. Maybe a little bit longer. The timeline's a little skewed now because they keep jumping back and forth. But he had 2 kids in the comics, and he had Scar and Hiro Kala. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But he had 2 kids on Sakaar. And so I don't know if they're going in that direction or not, but that's kind of where episode 1 and the end of episode 2 kind of leads me with the Hulk.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So share the same blood. They moved it around for the Hulk. What about She-Hulk still trying to be an attorney and denying the responsibility of being a superhero? How does that's what she did in the show. What does she do in the comics?
Yeah. So there's been a couple of different iterations of it. So it's kind of the same thing. She maintains her, status as a lawyer and that kind of stuff. There's some similar struggles trying to balance being a superhero and that kind of stuff. But, in a couple of different iterations, she handles it differently. So at first she denies like wanting to be the Hulk, period. She doesn't want it. wants something to do with it. But then she starts to enjoy it. And then she starts to live in the Hulk form on a more consistent basis. And then she realizes that she enjoys being She-Hulk more than she enjoys being Jennifer Walters. So maybe we'll see kind of a progression over the events of the 9 episodes or so that we have for She-Hulk, which will definitely tie into the MCU. I can guarantee you that she'll be. There's a lot of, in the comics, there's like a lot of jokes or jests about her being denied from the Avengers. And they make a comment about that in the 3rd episode, but that's never the case. And she actually is a part of the Avengers or Secret Avengers and that kind of stuff in the comics at some point. So she may be joining the Thunderbolts or something like that in the future, or, an alternate version of whatever, but she struggles the same way that she does, very similar to the comics as she does in the show.
Okay, interesting. From my perspective, starting with episode 2, I kind of found it a little funny of the depictions of the attorneys, the partner track, and I'm going to call bullshit on some of the stuff, and I'm going to say that they were spot on other stuff. Right. So I do agree with the depiction that all attorneys are alcoholics. So she and all of her friends she and all of her friends all get together after work at a bar. So did Daredevil. I think we're seeing a trend here, and it's because it's not a trend; it's factually based. Did you know? Did you know that on the back of the California bar license, at least they used to when they actually handed out cards, now you have to print your own.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, it's ecological, right? They don't want to print all this plastic if you're not going to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the back of it, they have a number for the other bar, which is a hotline for alcoholism. On your law license. On your law. The thing you walk up to court and say, "Hi, I'm representing this person. I'm an attorney. Here's my identification. 888, I drink too much."
That's awesome. I had no idea.
On your same license.
Oh my God.
No joke. So again, I drink Trulies. So I guess I guess still technically I'm on still that side of the room. So okay.
12 Trulies later, you're still good.
All right. So attorneys are alcoholics. All right. The next thing that I did take issue with is that let's say that a district attorney has district attorney's office does have some agenda or has a certain political viewpoints that they would not want to be connected because they don't want to hurt their re-election or election to the next position in their office. There's a lot of politics in the district attorney's office. So, okay, let's just go with the fact that they said we don't want a superhero. I call bullshit on the fact that no law firm wanted to hire her. Do you know what publicity? Oh, I can't even say it right. I'm so angry.
Publicity.
Do you know what publicity whores attorneys are? Especially if they're solo practitioners. Like, think of all the psychopath attorneys that you see on news representing high profile cases, right?
Yeah.
They're all nut jobs. I've seen them. What a good depiction of a solo attorney is, or an attorney trying to build their law firm? Better Call Saul. That's like spot on. Like taking out billboards, doing ridiculous commercials that you become famous for.
Yeah.
Like that's a better depiction of, just general law firms. Now, I think they were trying to go for the fact that she was supposed to go to these high caliber, big global law firms with, installations all over the map. So even they're going to want the high profile cases, but okay, let's make that argument. Now, the partner in the show, that was a spot on depiction. He had no empathy. He didn't care about her feelings. He was a psychopath. And those are all the qualifications to make a good partner at a global law firm. So I think they nailed that part. So yeah, for episode 2, let's see if I have a lot of notes. I apologize. All right.
No, you're fine.
You cut me off anytime.
Okay.
Okay, so one scene I didn't like was in the bar when she did get let go of the district attorney position. You name me one instance of a woman taking rejection well, and I'll submit, but otherwise, she sure as hell would have hulked out in that instance because she got rejected.
Name you one instance where a woman has taken rejection well.
Yeah, and as my proof and citations, every episode of The Bachelor.
Oh yeah, no. It's burn the bridge on the way out.
The Hulk.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So
no,
I think she would have tore that. We would have had part 2 of Destruction of the Bar, right?
Oh yeah.
First the Hulks, now this place. So I did that. Little commentary on the family scene. I really enjoyed it. Also made me very happy and gave me reason 507 why I'm glad that I'm not white. Because if that's what you guys have at a family dinner,
what?
No, thank you.
So,
is that your experience when you have Thanksgiving?
No, I hate my family. I don't go.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't hate my family.
Smart.
I love most of my family because they may listen. No, but I really do like most of my family. I don't get to see my family very often, so I don't have those same experiences. But I will say, quick interjection, they introduced a couple of characters that are major players later in the comics. And so like that asshole cousin that she has, who's like annoying, turns out to be a super powered, small, but kind of important character later in the comics. So
what?
Yeah. That dude with the long hair. I can't even remember his name now, but yeah. So he's
Best Buy manager.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah, he is. Well, yeah, I think he actually does say that he gets that job in like the second episode. But yeah.
That sounded to me like one of the most painful family dinners that looked horrible.
There was no pinatas anywhere. It was tragic.
See, I'm not used to that. When I go to my family get-togethers or the family dinner like that, they tell me that my cousin, little puppet, should be getting on parole soon. And so there's always one of them that
little puppet.
That Carla is now, she's doing a lot better because she's finally getting her GED, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, you guys are horrible.
She's 48. She just got her GED at 48. I don't know what happened.
I love picking on racial family dynamics. It's just so fun. We all come from crap. It's essentially what it boils down to.
Basically, I'm Italian. You're Hispanic. We all have our bodies to bear. Or bury, whatever.
Also, with that family interaction, I did think that it unraveled a little bit of not the plot, but the storyline and the backstory. Because there is no way 2 geniuses came out of that bloodline.
Really?
There were not very many smart people at that table. And now you got 2 geniuses out of it? I don't think so.
You don't think there's like 2 exceptional people in every family?
That share blood of...
It produced 2 Hulks?
Did you listen to the conversation of that family?
The only reason they were both able to handle the amount of gamma radiation they had...
I'm talking about in
because
the
of the blood they shared, right? So
it's definitely probable, and there's a genetic component, and I think the genes in that family did not produce enough brain power to get 2 geniuses out of it in the same lifetime. They had a mutation that either gave you special abilities to absorb gamma protection or lowered your IQ by about 15 points.
15 is...
conversely.
That's something. That's a number. I don't know about 15. We're talking like 45. But, yeah, so... Yeah, no, I think that generally speaking, there's 1, sometimes 2 exceptional people in every family. My sister's like a doctor. Here I am. Not a doctor,
building houses and drawing art all at the same time.
Artistic or autistic, however you want to look at it on the spectrum. So yeah, I mean, there's generally 1 or 2 significant individuals out of every household, but the odds of having 2 like geniuses, it's phenomenal, right? Like that's a spectacular family,
unless you're both
somebody had sex with the right person.
Unless both your parents are geniuses. Geniuses make geniuses. Sure, I can believe that. Mm-hmm. Those people making 2 geniuses, sorry. I can believe a Hulk is possible, but not you 2 cranking out 2 geniuses.
I don't know. I've seen two pretty people make an ugly baby, so you know what I mean. Like I don't know. That's true.
Make a pretty baby.
That's true
That's
too.
even worse.
I've seen attractive people who had like really, really atrocious looking parents. So I mean, you know, it happens. There are exceptions to the rule.
You want to know what's the best?
What's the best?
When an attractive woman marries an ugly man because of his power or success, and then she's not happy with the way her kid looks. She's always like, I love you.
I hope my wife doesn't listen to this episode.
Well, hopefully that's not the case. Let's see. Also, episode 2. All right. So on a serious note, I did think the actress did a wonderful job of portraying how a lawyer would behave, specifically in one scene when she's talking to the Abomination when he's incarcerated. And he states that it's not his fault. And that, you know, essentially because of the super serum soldier and the government telling him, you know, he didn't say it was their fault, but then you see her brain turn on. And she immediately started issue spotting. She asked him, the serum that the government gave you caused your subsequent actions. So right there, I just could immediately identify she already started working on his defense. Started getting the facts, doing causation. I thought she did an excellent job. And, you know, that's pretty spot on. Also, during the appeal, not the appeal, when she got the phone call from the partner and saw that the Abomination was in the Kumatai, that was also a good depiction of what a lawyer will have to deal with a client during the middle of a court case. Like an attorney will say, okay, I need you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And then you get a phone call like later that night. Oh, yeah, I called my husband and told him I was going to come after him financially and blackmail him. And he recorded it. Sorry about that. Just want to let you know before the trial. So, like that stuff totally happens where you think you got a plan, you got the defense, you're like, okay, here we go. And then your client's going to be like, oh, by the way, I was in a kumite. So it was pretty spot on.
Yeah, broke out of prison to hang out at a fighting club and then came back. They address it a little bit. They touch on that like a little bit in episode 3. Obviously, they backtrack a little bit. That scene that you're talking about the phone call and that kind of stuff happens at the very end of episode 2 before, you know, obviously the mid-credit scene. But I thought it was phenomenal. And that actress is incredible. I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of the show that she appeared in, formerly Orphan Black, but I've watched that entire series a couple of times now. And she's basically the Eddie Murphy in that show. She plays like American woman or whatever, raised by different parents. She plays like a British woman. She plays a police officer, and then she plays a drug addict, and she plays a clone of herself. Yeah, so she has some incredible talent, and she brings a lot of that to the show. And so for her playing two different characters, not even really different, just two struggles, two power struggles or whatever, and her character identity and that kind of stuff. Like she does a phenomenal job. And so she has significant talent. And I think she really dives into who her character is and wants to be. So the fact that she's kind of hit these highlights throughout the lawyer show, and the fact that they paid so much attention to the details. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but like episode 1 was She-Hulk, attorney at law. And then episode 2 is She-Hulk, attorney for hire.
I didn't.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like the small details that they put into this show was absolutely incredible, and I commend them for it. But you know, like she's an incredible actress, and I think that if anybody could pull this role off, my wife questioned it. You know, she was like, I don't know that, you know, she looks like the She-Hulk or whatever. I know that you had mentioned that her cup size was a little too small, and you know, whatever, but I think she's done like an incredible job, and I think that she will continue to do so. I'm very excited to see the rest of the episodes, and I do like the take on the lawyer spin.
I will be honest. So struggles with like Spider-Man dealing with being Peter Parker and Spider-Man, the alter ego, right? It typically is a heavy story. Same with Batman. You have to choose one side through the other. It's a very heavy, dark, deep analysis, right? I actually like that this is a more feminine, lighter analysis of the conflict, because if I was to look at my wife, she's a professional, she's a mother, she's a wife, she's a daughter, and she has to change those hats and glide through each of them. I kind of see, and I'm not a female, so I don't know, I'll be blowing, smoke on my ass, but I kind of see the She-Hulk Jennifer lawyer kind of in that same struggle of a woman just having to wear multiple hats in this type of society, right? As opposed to just take care of the home, take care of the kids. Now, yeah, they got to go in and out, and it's not going to be some deep struggle where you have to choose one or the other. You just got to juggle both, because that's the way society is now. So I kind of feel like it's a lighter, more authentic. Like I see many of my colleagues dealing with that kind of struggle. Same way.
Yeah. I really appreciate as ridiculous as some of these, Marvel movies and comic book based movies can be. I really appreciate like the realism in some of the storytelling. You know what I mean? Like you watch She-Hulk and then you watch like Thor Ragnarok. It's completely different feel. It's a completely different vibe. And obviously they have their own merits, but I really appreciate the connection, the emotional connection that you can share with the characters that they build. And they do that even in like Thor Ragnarok and some of the other movies that I think are a little bit more drastic. But I mean, like you can relate to the family relationships that Thor and Loki share. But I think Marvel's done a spectacular job of She-Hulk and trying to connect her to the audience. So I do commend them.
I think on that point, so with Thor Ragnarok, I wasn't the biggest fan. I do, like you said, see its merits, but it just felt like a lot of slap and tickle, right?
Yeah.
I would say the Guardians were kind of that way. There was some heaviness to it for sure, especially in number 2. But, I felt levity throughout the whole thing. In She-Hulk, I feel like I don't feel way down like it's super serious like, Daredevil was. But I feel that I don't want to say real, but there's that interplay with, you got some issues, you're going to work through it, you could still be silly. Like for this example, going back to the idea of wokeness and, whether this is a political promotion with their agenda. So in the beginning of episode 3, they had all the headlines of She-Hulk and whether this was feminism, whether this was affirmative action, whether it was Me Too, whether this was woke. And they raised those issues. They basically, to me, addressed the elephant in the room. And then they did that right after Jennifer asked the paralegal about Wong, and the paralegal goes, of course I'm going to contact him. I just thirst trapped him. Like, if they were that feminist, would they portray her in that light? I mean, maybe they're such feminists. They're, we do what we want with no accountability. But I just see them playing both arguments, and I appreciate that. It made me, it made me look at those credits and be like, all right, here we go. Are they producing their agenda? No, they just made a joke about a thirst trap. I just like how they almost like raised an issue and knocked it down, played with it a little bit, and then move on and enjoy the show, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I was going to say that, like, I appreciate the fact that, like, you can address a topic and then move on and not make that the center of your show, right? Like, there's been DC's done that in a couple of their TV shows. They took a perfectly good storyline and they threw too much into it and they tried to focus on the wrong things, and they ruined a couple of their television series by trying to politicize them, trying to weaponize their TV shows. And I don't think
form.
Yeah, I don't think, regardless of what agenda you have, what side of the aisle you're on, whatever, it's entertainment, and we're there to be entertained, and we don't want too much of the real world in our entertainment. Like I think generally people watch TV shows and movies to escape from, the Twitter feed and the Facebook feed and whatever. And although we appreciate a little bit of realism being highlighted in these TV shows and movies and whatever, I think generally speaking, a lot of people do that as an escape, and trying to see this as a form of entertainment and then having to face those things in your entertainment too. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, I would agree. We are coming up on an hour, so we want to try to keep it under that. But I got one other point. So the male district attorney that she worked with, her ex-coworker, plays the prototypical misogynistic foil that would be the proponent of perpetuating the argument of wokeism. Let me give you my take.
Okay.
I've actually met a couple of those guys dealing with them, pricks, and they're out there.
Yep.
They also had an attorney working with her that was understanding and gave him the poop map to go poop in the office. He seemed like a good dude, right? And so those guys are out there. Sure, it's convenient for you to put it in a female-driven story to show that women have to deal with that. But literally, I've seen women literally have to deal with that guy. So if they are biased, I'm going to be more understanding, and I'm not excusing them of it. But yeah, you're telling me a male attorney who's a district attorney has an ego problem and likes to womanize? Like that is the least fanciful portion of the show that I've ever heard.
That's news. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know specifically of a couple of individuals who are very much like that, junior attorney or whatever, who's chauvinistic and whatnot. But
you talking about me, asshole?
No, clearly not. But yeah, no, I know people that are like that, and that does exist and that kind of stuff. But there is, like you said, there is the alternative. There are people who are, out there like me and sometimes you, who are the complete opposite of that, right?
Right.
So I like that. I appreciate the fact that it showed that there are multiple sides, and they weren't portraying like one side, right? Like and that guy in the comics was a complete asshat. Like he was an asshole. He was trying to derail Jennifer Walters' career, and he was trying to show her up, and he was just an asshole. And so they did justice in that by like portraying him as such, because he is one. And they totally served justice in episode 3. And if you haven't watched it, we're going to spoil the shit out of it for you. But yeah, so they totally did justice by like giving her an opportunity to defend him. By destroying him. It was, oh man, that for me was awesome.
The most realistic part to me was that it was like water off his back. He was like, well, yeah, you still got me what I wanted. Like, what a psychopath. Just his ego, he's like Donald Trump's ego. No matter what you say to that guy, he's still going to think the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's just that level of narcissism, which is like, yeah, I've seen it on those guys. So I'm a fan. I will be happily watching the remaining episodes. Any final thoughts? Any parting ideas you wanted to get across?
So there is one thing that I wanted to kind of highlight was they are making a ton of references in She-Hulk. And they are tying it into more storylines than any other movie or TV series in the last 2 years. And they've made references to the uncle or whatever of Miss Marvel in episode 2, I believe. They made a couple of different references in the TV series, whatever. There's a screenshot of like either like a news article on like a website where it says like man fights with metal claws in a bar, right? Which if you've ever seen like the original X-Men with Hugh Jackman fighting in a bar with metal claws, right? So everybody knows that was Wolverine. They tied in Miss Marvel a couple of different ways by talking about her uncle and then having the symbol of Miss Marvel drawn, which they addressed this in like another breakdown video that I'd watched by some of these fantastic people at New Rock Stars, but they had the lightning bolt from Miss Marvel drawn on a blackboard. And the show supposedly takes place a year before Miss Marvel. This is all taking place like in 2024, but Miss Marvel takes place in 2025. So it's like a year before she becomes Miss Marvel. But yeah, they've made like a lot of different references to a lot of different shows. They're also bringing in like a lot of different cameos for a lot of different actors and different characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I'm really excited to see. We're only 3 episodes in. I'm really excited to see where they go in the last 6 episodes. And how much they dive into that. So we're only 3 episodes in, like I said, and they've already touched base on like, several different characters.
I will say you brought up an interesting point that I did enjoy about the show is that they break the fourth wall. And it's kind gives you that Deadpool feel. And they even made a joke about the cameos. This isn't a cameo show. Just, wait a minute. And so, yeah, it seems like a very playful show. And what better of a show to address, the battle of the sexes than in a playful show?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I would have hated for them to do it in WandaVision. I doubt it was possible, but it actually could have made that show worse. So,
well, there was a lot of like feminine, dominating type characters and that kind of stuff in WandaVision. So
that is true.
It played a little bit more towards feminism and that kind of stuff, which it didn't do so in a negative connotation by any means. It was a good show.
I wouldn't go that far. It's a good show.
Yeah, it was a good show. Whatever. We'll fight about it later. But yeah.
All right, brother. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us. We went a little long, but you can expect a couple more episodes out of us. And then I'll have to find another way to blackmail IEG to continue on and help me out with some other shows to get some more content out there. All right. Any parting words, brother?
No, man, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate it. And I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And if you are willing to listen, we are willing to talk. Appreciate it. Bye.
Have a good one.
That's it. That's our show. Join us next time for episode 6, the A side, where we finally get around to discussing the epidemiology of COVID and the science behind its vaccine. No, seriously, this might be our first intelligent conversation. Maybe. Please do us a favor and like, subscribe, share this podcast so we can get some traction. Once I get around to it, check us out on our socials. Combative Nerds on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You know the deal. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you next episode.